Hello, beautiful people. My name is Athol, talking about marriage, relationships, and getting what you want from them. And in yesterday's video, I talked about the concept of the lead domino. So a core structural problem in your life, usually coming from your childhood in some way, that then goes on to create problems and workarounds and all sorts of things that results in the giant tangled mess that your life is, but it's always the lead domino that is starting that whole chain of events. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's hard sometimes to exactly find what your particular lead domino is and how it interacts with your partner's lead domino, and why those two problems are often an interlocking puzzle that results in the full tangled mess of your relationship. So let's start with an example. Let's say that you're a guy, and when you were growing up, when you were 5 or 6, 7 years old, your father cheated on your mother and then eventually divorced her and left her for the other woman. And then ever since then, your mother's been a sort of a borderline basket case, very emotional, very anxious, very upset, hard to live with. And she just barraged you with all kinds of emotion. And you've spent pretty much your entire childhood walking on eggshells around your mother, trying to pacify and please that important female figure in your life, and totally trying to be the good boy, to grow up to be the good man, the opposite of the bad man that your father was. So here you are, totally programmed from an early age to be a nice guy, walk on eggshells, and try and basically pacify the significant woman you're with. So that's your lead domino, and that goes on to affect your life in many, many ways. And then you meet the girl that turns out to be your wife, and she has her own set of problems too. Let's say she was sexually abused in some way when she was young, so she is always very anxious and worried about people getting too close to her and taking advantage of her and treating her poorly, like it was good at first and then it turns to be nasty. And also the family she grew up in was, struggling to make ends meet a lot, and she is always anxious about, is there enough money? Will we have enough stuff? Are we going to be thrown out of our house? All this sort of thing. So she has this lead domino thing where she is driven to always be anxious, always to be on edge, and that mixture of avoidance and wanting people to be close to her and give her love. And that's her thing. So when you have your issue, I just need to find someone that I can, try and put in a magical cocoon and endlessly walk on eggshells around them. And her problem, I need someone to put me in a magical cocoon and always walk on eggshells around me. These two problems coincide. They go together. They link together. And that linking together the problems can create a bad relationship, but also a really stable one, because unconsciously both of you are playing your roles. And when one of you tries to break out of those roles, the other one tends to try and reel them back in. And when you're in that situation, it tends to be very, very easy to see what's wrong with your partner, because they're always the one making demands of you to act a certain way, and see your partner is the primary blame for the whole tangled mess. So it's very common when I start coaching with someone and talking to someone that they will see what their partner does, their partner's piece of the puzzle, as a good 80 or 90% of what is wrong with the relationship, and their part is maybe 10 or 20%. And it's not always a 50-50 split, but quite often it's at least a 60-40 or a 55-45 sort of split. And they can always look back at the very beginning of the relationship and see themselves eventually as like, I was really needy at that time. I needed someone to meet my issue. So the good news in all of this is that once you start seeing, okay, they have their big thing and I have my big thing, that frees you up from blaming them. It frees you up from basically demonizing them as the vampire of the relationship and you're the victim in the relationship. It can take away a lot of the anger and resentment And that's a huge step forward in terms of being positive and hopeful for the future. And you have so much more ability and power to work on your own stuff as opposed to try and leverage your partner into working on their stuff. And very often it's when you finally stop focusing on them and put more of the focus on yourself, start making the changes in yourself and pulling yourself forward, that's what finally starts unbalancing the relationship, that makes your partner finally realize they need to start doing something about their own issues. So there's a natural, I talked about it before, that there's a natural sort of balance of power in every relationship. And you upset that balance by finally becoming more powerful in yourself, stronger, happier, more content, and doing what you need to do to maximize your energy and attractiveness and happiness. That's what breaks up a bad but stable situation and at least gets you to the neutral but unstable one. And I've talked about that in videos before. I'll link below. So that's why it's sometimes so hard to see what your actual issue is, what you need to work on, because we all get tunnel vision on what's wrong with our partner. So that's about it. Gonna leave it there. Please like, share, comment, and most importantly, please do subscribe, and I will talk to you tomorrow.